My name is Parwiz and I will be your instructor throughout this course. ICND1 is Interconnecting Cisco Network Devices 1, meaning that there is another piece of the exam called ICND2. ICND1 and ICND2, both of them helps you to prepare for the exam called Cisco Certified Network Associate. ICND1 exam code is Cisco 100-101, meaning that anytime you want to take an exam, you have to go through this code and then you have to take your exam. So we will go through ICND1 in this video training, and we will learn all the concepts, all the technologies and terminologies that is required for the certification. What are we gonna learn in this course? After completing this course, you will be able to build a network for small or medium-sized organizations, meaning that you will be able to configure, you will be able to set up, or you will be able to design and implement and troubleshoot a network for small to medium-sized organizations. You will have overall understanding of how a network works, how a packet travels from one place to another place. What are some important points that we have to keep in our mind? Because building a network or configuring a network, configuring a Cisco router, Cisco switches, or any other device is not so difficult, but building up a network that is proper, reliable, secure, and efficient is most important part that you have to keep in your mind. So after completing this exam, you will be able to learn that how can I build a network for any type of business by keeping all the aspects in your mind. The second part is you can take your CCNA exam online, meaning that once you complete your ICND1 and ICND2 exam, you will be able to take your Cisco Certified Network Associate exam online. This course is going to prepare you for CCNA exam. What knowledge is required for this certification? Basic computer knowledge. You really need to have basic computer knowledge, meaning that you have to have some computer or some basic computer skills that are like Microsoft Office, accessing internet, downloading files, installing programs. That are the basic computer skills, and you really have to know that what is computer and how a computer works. CompTIA Network Plus is a big plus. Why I have written a big plus in here? Because CompTIA Network Plus is one of the other top certifications that is available, and if you really want to have a good understanding of how a network works, what are different technologies and what are different terminologies used in networking, you can go ahead and take a look at CompTIA Network Plus trainings, books, everything is available on the internet. So once you complete CompTIA Network Plus training, you will be able to have the understanding of how a network really works and how a packet is traveled from one place to another place, and what are the different terminologies and different parts of the networks that you really need to know, like WAN technologies, LAN technologies. All these things will help you out to understand your Cisco certification training very well. You really don't have to go for certification for CompTIA Network Plus. You really need to have the understanding, or you really need to have the training for CompTIA Network Plus, but still it is not really important that you must do, but that's a recommendation from me. So how I'm going to train you for this course? I'm gonna go with two parts. The first part is going to be the concepts, and the second part is going to be practical labs, because these two things really makes a person to learn and remember everything forever. If I say forever, it's not like forever, because but I can say it forever, but if you follow both of them all the time. So in the concepts, what are we going to do is we are gonna learn that how networking works, how a network works, how a packet travels from one place to another place, what are the different rules, or what are the different rules, and what are different things that are really happening whenever one packet is going from one place to another place. Because sending an email or sending a data, whenever you look, it's so easy. Like you copy, you paste, you press send button, but you really don't know what's happening in the background. What are we going to do is we are going to learn all those things. How a routing process works. Whenever one packet is going from one place to another place, from one network to another network, how that routing process works. And how switching and switch security works. Because ICND1 and ICND2 is in two things: routing and switching. Routing is part of the router, switching is part of the switches. So we are gonna see that how switching works. Whenever you connect a client to a switch, how that switch is operated, how that switch sends a packet from one place to another place, how packets are traveling from that switch, and what are the security features available on the switch that we can configure in order to make sure that our network is free of viruses, free of threats, and everything is stable. And then we are gonna see IP addressing in real life. IP addressing is one of the most important thing that we really need to understand. Like every person have its name, computers or any device that is connected on the network, in order to access it, in order to know it, in order to call it, you need to have something called IP address. So IP address is something like a name of a person that we use in our common life. So what are we gonna do is we are gonna see what are different type of IP addresses and how can we use these IP addresses in a way that it is efficient, secure, and reliable, because there are different rules that is always used. So we are gonna see how can we do that in order to build a reliable network. Once we are done with the concept, we are going to go through practical labs. Practice makes everyone perfect. Like if you do practice all the time, you will remember it forever. If you don't practice, you will never learn anything. So what are we going to do is whatever we learn from the concepts, we are gonna do it in practical. Cisco router and switch configuration. We are gonna see how can we configure a router and switch, like basic configurations, advanced configurations. We are going to see all those configurations practically. And then we will go through network address translation. Network address translation means that if you have a private network or local area network and you want that local area network to be able to connect to the internet, because there are two types of IP addresses. One is private and one is public. Private cannot directly talk to public, and public cannot directly talk to private. So there is something required that needs to do translation. What are we going to do is we are gonna use NAT for it. So we will study and we will configure network address translation. We will configure routing, like if there are two different networks and they need to talk to each other, how can we configure routing in a way so that these two networks or those two networks can talk to each other? Cisco router and switch security. How can we configure router and switch security in order to make sure that It is free of viruses, it is free of threat, and hackers cannot attack the network. Like you are somehow closing the doors to hacker. So it doesn't mean that the hacker will not be able to access your network, but you really need to have preventions in order to make sure that everything is fine. And then there is one super lab. Whatever we are going to study in this video training, I'm going to go through a super lab, and that super lab will be the example of real life networks. We are going to connect multiple routers, multiple switches, and then we will configure those by going through different objectives based on my experience. And then I will just go through a CCNA lab workbook. I will provide a CCNA labs workbook, which is a book that have a lot of labs for each part of ICND1 and ICND2 that is going to help all of you to learn commands, to learn the concepts, and to learn how to configure the different parts of ICND1 and ICND2. So, practice makes me expert. Most of the users have concern that if I am studying ICND1 or if I am studying Cisco, I cannot afford to buy a router, I cannot afford to buy a switch because it is expensive. So, practice is also really important. What are we gonna do is I'm going to show you different ways to practice your labs. So the first thing is GNS3. We are going to go and configure each and everything that we are going to do is through GNS3 because I really don't want to go through real routers and real switches, because those real routers and real switches is something that might not be afforded by most of the students. So I'm going to go through GNS3, and or there is another choice for packet tracer, but packet tracer you have to pay for it, it's not free. Or anyone who can afford to buy router or switch, they can use the third option, and then they can have their own home lab. So let's start and see. One thing that I forgot. So what are we going to do is we are going to go to the next video training, and we are going to use GNS3, and we are going to build up our labs based on the real life scenarios. And anyone again who is not able to buy the real router and switch, don't worry, because there are other ways to practice your labs, which is DNS3 and packet tracer. So I hope you really liked the video and you have learned something. Thank you.